Hello everybody, good evening and welcome to your very own BYJU'S 9th and 10th grade channel. I'm your teacher Aishwarya, and as a part of our Exam Ed series, we are doing the chapter The Physical Features of India, where in this particular live class, I will be doing the full chapter explanation at one shot, which means that our class today is going to be slightly a little bit longer because this chapter is very big. But let me tell you that if you've read the chapter once, this is a very simple and easy chapter, and I'm here to help you with this chapter. My intent is to just help you study this chapter better. That's all, right? So I hope all of you are excited for today's class, and very quickly, students, please do let me know if my audio, my video, and my screen and whatever I'm writing on the screen is visible to all of you. If it is, please do give me a quick thumbs up to let me know that we are good to go. Yes? Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Yes? Awesome. So now, of course, I know that many of you here are very regular to my class, and I know that many of you are pretty new to my class as well. And many of you might probably be watching this video much after the live stream. So when you are watching this video, first thing that I would always recommend is that please have your notebooks and please have your textbooks ready with you. Now, most importantly, more than your notebook, I would recommend that you have a textbook and have some post-its or some extra spare sheets ready, because today what I'll tell you is I'll make you mark all the important pointers, and I'll also tell you how or what kind of questions can come in your examination, right? Secondly, I need you to have all your stationery ready, which means pen, pencil, eraser, sharpener. I need all of these things ready. I don't want you running in between and trying to find it. Yes? Now, of course, one very important thing that I would like all of you to have is your water bottle, because today's class is going to be long. So whenever you are watching this, please make it a point that all of you, have your water bottles ready. Now, last but not the least, see, I'm going to cover the whole chapter today, right? So I will cover the whole chapter, which means when I'm going to start with the Himalayan range and you're going to ask me a question on coastal plains, it is not going to work, because you know that I will anyway cover coastal plains. Now, I know that earlier I had done a class separately on the Himalayan ranges, which is a detailed explanation, which is why in this particular explanation of the full chapter, we will focus on topics that are relevant to CBSE, right? Now, normally I love giving you a lot of extra information, a lot of storytelling, and I love doing that. But today, of course, I may have to restrict myself from all of this, because today we have to look at the chapter, and the way we will look at it is understanding it from an examination point of view, right? What is relevant for the examination and what is necessary for our understanding. So I hope you understand that this is going to be my way of teaching when it comes to this chapter, right? I will do that. Most likely, I'm trying to do that as a live class. In case if I can't do the economics chapter as a live class, I will do it as a pre-recorded one, because that's a pretty simple chapter, right? So not to worry. Now, students, I hope we are all ready for today's class. I hope we are all geared for today's class. Yes, I am doing amazing, Anok, and many others, right? So I hope that all of you are excited. Ma'am, this is what happens when you leave the syllabus for later. I hope you are not telling about me, right? Because I know I did technically leave this part of it, right? No. Exam edge may you have to come and study, but I hope that I have not left it for a very long time. Now, I'll also help you a little bit with understanding and how to make notes for this chapter also, right? I will give you tricks. I'll also tell you how to make the questions, right? Or how to make your notes for this chapter. So that way, when you do recall and revise, it becomes easy, right? Yes, I know. SST is a huge, vast syllabus. Not to worry. Everything will be okay, right? Have hope. Have confidence, right? Yes. I will share the timetable. See, ideally today was supposed to be English, and you were supposed to have Khushbu ma'am's class for grade 10. But because in Delhi, since today is the G20 summit, and we know that classes couldn't happen, so we're taking the SST classes. That is why today's is not actually a scheduled class per se. But other than that, normally you have different classes. You have math today, right? Yes. So now, students, I will get started, right? Now, first and foremost, we are going to be, this is a long class. This is going to be a very, very long class. So let's get started. I need everybody's focus. I am aiming for 2 hours of class, not more than that, right? 2 hours or under 2 hours, I want to finish this. Yes, Radhika, so kindly avoid spamming. Now, of course, today we are looking at the chapter Physical Features of India. Now, when we learn about this chapter, we don't just deep dive into what is what, right? We'll not just directly start learning about the Himalayas and the plateau region and the coastal plains. But rather, you need to understand what are physical features, why should I even study about this chapter, and of course, why or what are the major physiographic divisions. Now, like I said, there is a class that I've already taken on the Himalayan ranges, which is why maybe the initial part of it may look similar to that. So students who have watched that chapter and come for this, not to worry, that will be a revision for you. But this is for everybody new out there. Yes? So first, let's understand what are physical features, right? Now, when I say the word physical feature, now let's start thinking logically rather than just mugging up definitions and thinking that geography is all about ratification. Let's understand it quite literally, right? So what do we mean by the term physical feature? Yes, so if I ask you, right, what is a physical feature? Or if I ask you, what is the physical feature of this remote? What will you tell me? Ma'am, I can see that this remote that is there is black in color. I see that the remote is rectangular in shape. Then you will tell that, ma'am, I can see that there are some circular buttons, right? So you will tell me something that is visible. Very good, right? You will tell me the property. Very good, Sai, Abhimanyu, Anok. Yes, you are talking about the important features that are visible, right? So in our country, India, when I talk about the physical features, right? Our country is a melting pot of culture is always what I say. We have so many different things that are happening in different parts of our country. But just apart from the fact that different parts of our country have different traditions, different cultures, yummy food, different monuments, we also see that our country is very diverse in different aspects, right? So we see that physical features that are there are basically the natural features of the earth's surface, right? Natural features that I am able to see, right? That I am able to visualize, such as my plateaus, my plains, and my mountains, right? So we talk about the physical features or the physical characteristics, right? We talk about the physical characteristics. Now, when we talk about, say, the physical features of India, our beautiful country is stacked with so many different kinds, right from the, the magnificent Himalayas all the way to the beautiful plateau regions and the scenic coastal regions, right? So we see that there are so many different kinds of physical features that are there. Now, of course, I am sure many of you have this confusion, and I want to address this question right now itself. How many of you have a confusion between what is a physical feature and what does the word topography mean? Any of you have this confusion? Ma'am, is there a difference between topography of a region or physical features? Yes? Yes or no? I know this doubt will come at this point now, or at some other point you will ask me, right? Okay, yes, ma'am. Now I want to ask you, do you think that it is the same or is it different? What do you think? Now I'm sure that you would have heard the word topography at some point. It has been used in some cases, right? But now, of course, what I need you all to do is to try to understand from your end. Try to think. Is physical features, which I know are the natural features that I see, right? But what about my topography? Is it same or is it different? Try to think of it first yourself. What do you think? Rather than understanding it directly from me. Yes, I have explained it before also, right? Because see, I know that topography that is there is a little bit of a tricky concept to understand. And let me tell you, when I had topography and I had a whole main thing in topography when I was in 10th standard, right? So we have topography sheets and we have a lot of, work to, we get those. That is a part of one section that we have to do in ICSE. So topography that is there. Yes, I know it's a little tricky, but let's understand. Topography that is there refers to the arrangement of physical features, right? So we talk about the arrangement of natural and the natural, or in some cases artificial, but let's talk about natural features, right? Topography refers to the arrangement of these natural physical features, which means, right, if I take topography of an area, it means that here I will have some rivers which are flowing. Then here I can see that there are these hills that are there. Then of course I see that on another region I have my plateau region. So all of this, right, in an area, I have some different kinds of physical features that are arranged or distributed. That is what we call as the topography of a given area. While what are physical features? Physical features that are there are the natural features that we get, right? So are we all clear with the difference between what is topography and what are physical features? Yes? Are we clear? Easy peasy, right? There is no mentee today, so requesting you not to spam Akash, no mentee. Yes? So now don't have this confusion, all right? Now, of course, let's understand why should we study about this chapter, right? But before that, let me also tell you about the different kinds of physical features that we see. Now, India is a very magnificent country. I can never stop telling this. That is because in our country, we have all the way from the Deccan Plateau, right, which is one among the oldest physical and stable features that we see, all the way to the Himalayas, which are young and unstable, and we'll understand why. Followed by which we have the northern plains, which are the youngest that are there. So in all these cases, we see that there are so many different kinds of features. So what is it that helps in creating all of these physical features, right? What is or what are the factors that contribute towards this? Now see, there are various things. I will tell you what we mean by young and unstable. All of that I will explain, right? So what is it that causes? Now you've learned about this in your lower grades. I am telling you, you've learned about this concept. Very good. Exactly, right? So we know that the earth that is there, right? We know that there are these tectonic plates or the continental plate, the tectonic plates that are there. And we know that due to movement of tectonic plates that happen due to some internal forces or the endogenic forces, we see that as a result, we see that there is slight movement of these tectonic plates, right? So due to tectonic plate movement, we see that it has resulted in the formation of various landforms like your mountains, plateaus and plains. And of course, we know that this is not something that forms like this. It takes millions of years to form. So now we've had a good understanding about what are physical features. But why should I study about these physical features? What am I benefiting out of it? Well, studying about physical features is very, very important because when you know about the natural landform, see, when you go and you want to build a house, right? If you want to build a house in, say, a given area, now you should know first and foremost what are all the landforms that are available, right? So firstly, understanding the natural place of an environment is important. Now at the same time, if you only understand the natural environment, we'll be able to create our own environment. So like I told you, right now, wherever you live, I am sure that you have easy access to water. I am sure that you have stores nearby. You have roads through which you can travel and reach those stores, right? So I'm sure that you are able to you have those facilities. That is your surroundings at this point. But you imagine, right, back in those days or in some cases, right, we see that there are some places to which where if maybe high up in the mountains, right? You cannot build like one whole community there. We have to understand, or if I want to build a community high up in the Himalayas, I should understand the natural environment that is there so that I will be able to sort of adjust and make my own environment so that we can live in harmony with the nature. Now, of course, it's a different case that we have exploited nature and now we are at a brink where, conservation is at utmost importance. But nonetheless, this is one thing that you need to understand as to why we need to study physical features, right? I will tell you everything. I told you, science and facts, many others. I told you, if I'm teaching Himalayas and you ask me coastal plains, you know that I'm going to give you the answer anyway. So please be patient. I only request patience and I only request your focus, because if you dedicate that 2 hours to me, my guarantee to you is that this chapter becomes easy, right? So I want that trust in me from you as much as I trust you to do that, okay? Now we will move on to the third part, which is what are the major physiographic divisions, right? So now, of course, we're talking about the major physiographic divisions. Now, why have I suddenly spoken about from physical feature, I have gone all the way to physiographic. Why am I using this fancy word? Why have I suddenly changed and using the word physiographic? What is the reason behind using the word physiography? Arey ma'am, all this while you told physical feature, physical feature. Now suddenly you have come with physiography. So what is the intent or what is the meaning behind this, right? Now physiography that is there. So physiography is nothing but it is the study of physical features on the Earth's surface, right? So because we call physiography as the study of physical features, we can also say that these are the various physiographic features that are present. So what are the 5 or 6 most important physiographic features? Neha has already given me the answer, but I want the answers from the others also, right? What are the 6 important physiographical features that are there? Yes? Quickly, jaldi in the chat, you can let me know. Very good. The Himalayan mountains, the northern plains, the peninsular plateau, desert, coastal plains and islands, right? So as you can see, we see that we have the Himalayan mountains, northern plains, peninsular plateau, Indian desert, coastal plains and islands. And as you all know, we are going to cover this entire topic. That means all 6 of it, we will understand the extent up to which they are present, right? We will understand about its structure, what resulted in its formation, right? How it helps us. So we will learn about all of these things in great detail, right? So are we clear so far? So far as to the introduction of why we are studying this. See, the theory of plate tectonic movements, I will tell you when I do Himalayas, right? I'll talk about that. The theory of tectonic plate movement, I will talk about it. So far, introduction, clear ho gaya. Ye kya hai? Why are we learning? Why should I study? Not just because in CBSE they put one paper like that. No, I mean one chapter like that I have to study. Yes? Ma'am, take 1 hour without seeing chat. Actually, how about that? How about I finish Himalayan mountain and northern plains together and then I take doubt board? So this is to my live students. How about I take the Himalayan mountains and the northern plates at one stretch and then I do doubt boards? Or as and when I see that you guys are telling, ma'am, I'm not able to understand, I'll stop at that point and explain it once again, but there will be many doubts that I might not, right? So I might not be able to answer some of it, but please don't tell me that, ma'am, you are ignoring. So yes, I'm asking you, I'm fine with however. See, that's one thing you need to know. I'm okay, but I want your learning to be prioritized. Okay, see, physical features are the natural features, right? We can also call them as physiographic features. That's all. It's as simple as that, right? No, not much, Riyanshu. I'm just about to start. Nazism chapter, Ankita ma'am will be taking that. Yes? Okay, just give me 1 minute and we will get started. Okay. Important questions soon. We'll do it. Otherwise, we'll be doing a Maha Menti altogether. If the important questions don't happen, we'll do it in the form of Menti. Yes, I will do all the chapters. Don't worry. But now, please don't spam. So let's get started with the first topic or the first physiographic division that is there, which is going to be the Himalayan mountains, right? Now, when we talk about the Himalayan mountains, I always tell you that the Himalayan mountains that are there are the mighty mountains. And normally and very personally, I always tell you that there is a certain sense of peace and calm that I get when I see the Himalayas, right? Or when I'm in those mountain ranges, I feel a sense of calm. I feel a sense of positive energy all around me. Now, of course, we are not going to get into the emotions behind the Himalayas, but rather we will be talking about the structure, the physical features of the Himalayas. Now, if you see, the Himalayas are often said to be geologically young and structurally fold mountains that stretch across the northern borders of our country. Now, here we are talking about the term geologically young. Now, quickly to give you an introduction, the word geologically young means, please write this down in your textbook, please circle it and write it down, right? So the word geologically young means that when compared to the Earth's age, right? So when I compare the Earth's age and when the Earth was formed versus when my Himalayas were formed, right? It is relatively recent, right? Which is why, as you can see, it is said to be geologically young. Now, what do I mean by structurally fold? Structurally fold means it is with respect to how they were formed, right? So, this is with respect to how they were formed. Now, how were these mountains formed, right? How were the mountains formed? Let's understand this. Now, of course, back in those days, right? See, right now, if you look at the land that we have, we often say that we have 7 continents, we have so many different types of oceans, and we have all different names and so on and so forth. But way back in those ages, right? If you see that the land was not broken or the land was not split into different continents, but rather it was one huge continent, right? And of course, we see that this one huge land mass that was there. So this one huge land mass that was there was what we call as Pangaea. What is Pangaea? Pangaea is the land mass. All the lands or all the continents, if I take it and I put it together, right? That is how they existed at one point. They did not exist the way it is right now. Yes? So we see that they were one big land mass which is called as Pangaea. And of course, we know that the water bodies together was called as Panthalassa. Very good, right? So it is called as Panthalassa that surrounded it. Now, of course, the Pangaea eventually broke down into 2, forming your Laurasia and your Gondwana land, right? So, what is Laurasia and Gondwana land? They are nothing but they are parts of your Pangaea, which eventually split, right? Now, how is it that a big land mass, it split? What happened to it? So what happens is that from the inside, I told you that there are various endogenic forces, right? So which means that due to the movement of magma, we see that at some point we see that there will be some cracks that start to form. Now understand, I'm oversimplifying this concept, okay? I am oversimplifying it because I know that I have a lot of topics to cover, which is why I'm probably oversimplifying it. Please forgive me for oversimplifying. Now, of course, as we all see, we know that due to internal forces, we saw that the land masses that were there, they started to split, right? So we see that these things started to split. So eventually cracks started to form. So if I have a piece of land, we saw that cracks started to form and they started to split. Now then eventually they ended up forming 7 major plates which we call as the tectonic. So let me just write this down. Tectonic plates, right? 7 major plates were there. Now, how many were there total? The major ones. Understand, I'm talking about the major ones, which is what we call as the 7 major plates. Now, here 2 plates that we need to be concerned with is the Eurasian plate and the Indo-Australian plate. So, we saw that India earlier was not technically part of your Asia, right? But we saw that due to this movement of plates, where we saw that the Indo-Australian plate moved northwards, right? So we saw that this plate that was there, it started to move northward and it collided, right? So we see that it collided with the Eurasian plate, leading to the formation of Himalayas, right? So when that collision happened, we saw that it resulted in the formation. Now, many of you are asking me, ma'am, is this fake or true? This is as per the theory that was proposed, the plate tectonic theory, right? So, this is exactly how the formation happened. Now, what do I mean by they came together? So, we saw that the Himalayas that are there, they are structurally fold mountains. So, what do I mean by structurally fold? It means that when 2 plates, right, when 2 plates collide, we see that they are pushed from both the sides. So, you take your tablecloth or you take your blanket and you push it from both the sides, right? What will happen? We see that as say one mountain will form, right? So we see that something of this sort will be there where it will, fold on top top of each other, right? So we see that it will fold on top of each other. So we see that when something very similar happens when the plates are colliding, where we see that they will fold on top of each other, resulting in the formation of fold mountains. So why am I calling my Himalayas structurally fold mountains? Because of the way they are formed, right? The folding process. That is why we call them as structurally fold. Now, if you look at it, we see that they are geologically young. That means that my earth is there for millions and millions of years. But my Himalayas, when compared to when my earth was formed, it is relatively new, right? It is relatively young. And interestingly, right, we see that they are fold mountains and they are unstable. That is the most interesting part. That means what? What do I mean by the fact that they are unstable? Can you tell me? What does it mean by it is unstable? It's not, see, this is a theory that is proposed. There could be changes to this theory in the future also. You never know, right? Very good, Harsimran. That means that they are still forming. Your Himalayas that are there, they are still forming. It is not like the Himalayas have stopped growing. They are still growing. I have explained why is it called as young. Young because of the geological age. Why is it fold? Because when the plates that were there, right? When they came together, they collided and they folded on top of each other, right? They folded on top of each other, resulting in its formation. So these are the key words. So they can ask you why geologically young, or why are they called as structurally fold, or why are they unstable. So if some give reason question of this sort comes, you know what to write. Yes? So this is all about an introduction to Himalayas. Now let's understand its location. Where do I find my Himalayas? You tell me. Where am I going to find my Himalayas? See, we are citizens of India. This chapter should be very easy, right? All of us are from different parts, right? We're all from different parts of the country. So we are able to relate to some parts or some physiographic features, of course, right? Yes. Very good. Northeast, North, Nepal, Assam, North. So basically they form the northern part. Very good. Simple. Now we see that they stretch over the northern part and they act as a natural boundary for our country, right? So we see that they are the ones which act as in the northern part of it. They of course extend from the west to the east and they act as a natural boundary, right? And we see that it is in the form of an arc. Yes. So we see that they extend or they are extending in the form of an arc and they separate our country from the other countries of Asia, right? So this right here is important. Now this arc is present, but from where to where does it stretch? We see that it starts all the way from the west, right? It stretches from the west all the way, right? All the way to the east, yes? So we see that it stretches from the west all the way to the east. Starting from the Indus River that is there through Jammu Kashmir, we see that through the Himachal, Uttarakhand, parts of Nepal, Sikkim, it goes into the northeast, right? And of course, while it reaches the Brahmaputra region near Arunachal, it will stop. Right? So here we see that this entire length is about 2,400 kilometers, right? 2,400 kilometers. Now how to remember? Ma'am, how will I remember so much? I don't have magical memory power. I know. You don't have magical memory power. You can have magical memory power. I'm not denying it. But in case if you don't have that magic, simple way, start making tabular columns for the whole chapter. Okay? Start making tabular columns where you start having Himalayas, description, location, extent, right? And of course, further on when we learn about the different types of it, you can include the rivers, right? So there are, or the categorizations, you can have all of this, but you can make a nice table, right? Yes. So this is of course for location and its extent. Now, of course, we see that when you talk about the width, right? We see that it is about 400 kilometers. So, it's very wide, closer to the western side. But as it progresses towards the east, right? We see that the ranges start to become a little narrow, closer to the Arunachal Pradesh, right? And of course, we see that there is difference in height as well. Yes? Very simple and easy, okay? Now, of course, ma'am, आप बना कर देना टेबल, मैं बना कर दूंगी, बट आप फर्स्ट बना दीजिए दीप्ति. Anok Bacha, I told you when I'm teaching in class. Again, students, remind and help your friends. Tell them that in case if I am not paying attention, if I'm not replying, it's just because I am teaching right now. Okay? Okay. Ma'am, are the Himalayas the longest? So in the Himalaya also we see that there are 3 ranges, right? So we see that there are various divisions of the Himalayas. So we will understand that. Now the Himalayas can be divided as north-south, that means from the north to the south, right? Or I can divide it from west to east, right? So this is the division. Visualize the division. It is as simple as that. Okay? Don't blindly think, okay, this is what it is, this is what it is. Visualize it. Take the map in your book, right? Or use an image. See, now that you are using, right, all of you here, all of you are using, internet, and you have so much exposure. Maybe take pictures of it and you keep it in your, maybe your laptop, your phone, so that when you are watching it, you are learning it side by side, right? It's as simple as that. So first up, we will focus on the north-south division. Now, north-south division, that means from the north to the south when I divide it, right? I have my greater Himalayas, my lesser Himalayas, and my Shivaliks. Yes? So first up, let's have a look at the greater Himalayas. Now, the greater Himalayas that are there are also called as the inner Himalayas, or they are also called as Himadri, right? And we know that this is a continuous range. Yes? So this is a continuous range and of course home to the loftiest peaks that are there. Now we see that there are so many different kinds, right? Now when you talk about the loftiest peaks, you know that there is a table given in your textbook with all the peaks. So you don't need to memorize them. You can get any 2 examples of peaks that are found in the greater Himalayas. So very quickly, can you tell me, right? Can you tell me and name 2 peaks which are present in this Himadri region, right? In the Himadri or in the greater Himalayan range, 2 peaks that are there. I want the names right now. See, you have a list of peaks which are given, but you need to remember 2. Aram se, as examples, they will ask you, right? Very good, all of you. Very good. Yes, very good. Yes. So as you can see that they have an average of 6,000 meters, and if you look at the core, right? If you look at the core of it, we see that they are made up of granite, right? So we see that these right here, they are mainly made up of granite. Now this Himadri region is also home to various glaciers, right? Also the Gangotri glacier. Now what is the importance of Gangotri glacier? Can you tell me? Why is the Gangotri glacier important to all of us? Very, very important, right? So we know that the Gangotri glacier that is there is a primary source of what? Primary source of dash. Very good. Very good, right? This is where it is a primary source for river Ganga, right? And we know that this right here is super duper important. What is granite? We know that granite that is there is a type of rock, right? And we know that again, going back to 7th grade where we have learnt about how we have intrusive and extrusive igneous rock, granite is an example of intrusive igneous rock, right? So we know that it is present, or the cooling happens internally. Yes? Very good. Now some of the states through which this particular range passes through. This is a long range, right? And of course we see that some of the states through which it passes through, we know that it passes through Jammu Kashmir, we know that it passes through parts of Himachal, parts of Uttarakhand and parts of Sikkim. Yes? So we know that this right here is super duper important to remember. Yes, very good, exactly. Now, of course, we know that the next part that is there is the lesser Himalayas, or what we call as the Himachal. Now, this is the next one, right? So, as you can see, this lies in the south of your Himadri region. Yes? And we know that this is a little more rugged mountain system. Now, going back, one point that I forgot to mention is that this right here is composed of peaks. And, of course, we know that because of its height as well, right? We see that the peaks have asymmetrical folds, right? So the peaks that are there, we see that they have asymmetrical, my spelling is going wrong today, asymmetrical folds. And what do we also observe? We observe that many of them perennially throughout the year, right? We see that they have snow They are snow-clad in mountains, right? So we see that this right here is very simple. Yes, so 2 points you need to remember because they can ask you to differentiate between the greater Himalayas and the lesser Himalayas. And if they ask you to differentiate between greater and lesser Himalayas, first thing of course is the location. This is northernmost while lesser Himalayas lie towards the south. Next up we see that they have asymmetrical peaks and they are snow-clad in, while here it is a little more of a rugged mountain system, right? And of course we see that there we saw that inside was made up of granite, while on this side inside or the ranges are mainly composed of highly compressed rocks, and of course we see that these rocks are altered, right? And of course we see that the average mountain ranges, average height that is there ranges between 3,700 to 4,500 meters, right? Yes. Then of course we see that we have 50 kilometers, it extends, or the width is of course around 50 kilometers with 3 prominent mountain ranges, right? So here there are 3 prominent mountain ranges where we have the Peninsular range, which is the longest and the most important range, right? So we see that most of the Peninsular range lies in the Kashmir region, Jammu Kashmir region, and of course we have the Dhauldar range, which is very prominent in Himachal side, right? And of course we have the Mahabharat range, which is again a very prominent range that lies in Nepal, right? So this right here is very, very important to understand. And we also know that in the lesser Himalayas, various hill stations also come, right? Various hill stations. So can you give me some names of hill stations? Thank you, gamers. Thank you so much. Very sweet of you, right? Yes, very good. Kulu range that is there. I know Priya's like, ma'am, my village, I'm from Himachal. Very good. Shimla, yes. Manali. If you remember in my previous session, I told you how I went and I visited the Manali. I went to Manali and I had visited the ranges, right? So where did I go and visit? I visited the lesser Himalayas that are there, right? So this is some place that I visited. I actually want to show you one more picture for Western Ghats, but I didn't get time to add it. Maybe I will share with all of you later after the class, right? Rugged means it is very irregular, right? It's very rugged. So it's very rough, you could say, right? Yes. Awesome. Now the last range that is going to be there is the Shivaliks, right? So Shivaliks that is there of course is found below, right? It's found in the south of your lesser Himalayas, right? Now of course we see that these ranges that are there, or in these ranges there's a lot of sediments which are brought down by the rivers. Now from the higher ranges or from your glaciers, when your rivers are flowing down, we know that they will bring sediments, right? So we see that they are going to start bringing sediments, which is why we see that because they are located in the southernmost, or when compared to your Himadri, they are in the southernmost region. We see that since they are located further away, lot of sediments are found, right? And we know that these valleys, what is a valley? We know that valleys are places. So when there's a dip like this, the valley is the place between two hills that are there. So mainly valleys have a lot of alluvium, which is a type of important soil, and thick gravel that is found, right? So now of course we see that in this particular place, right, between, or the valleys between the lesser Himalayas and the Shivaliks, we see that there are formation, or there are dhuns which are present, right, or there are dhuns which are formed. So what are these dhuns? Dhuns, I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Sometimes my pronunciation go haywire, so please don't mind, right? So what happens is that in the mountainous regions, right, in the mountainous regions, what happens is the river will be flowing, right? So we have a river, la 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 la, it's flowing and it's coming. But now what has happened? So when we have a river, and let's say that a river encountered an obstacle. So let's assume it encountered an obstacle like a mountain, right? So it has encountered an obstacle like a mountain. So what will happen? Can the river now go up the mountain and then go round the mountain? Absolutely not, right? We know that at this point when it has encountered, it is just going to stop, right? It is going to stop at one point, which means eventually what will happen? We see that the water that is there will start to accumulate on the side of the obstacle. So see, this is my obstacle. Okay, this is my book. I have a reference book with me. Let me use your textbook, that is better. See, this is my obstacle. This is the river. Ta -la 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 -la. it has encountered an obstacle. Now, not like my river can go up and down, right? So what will happen? My river will decide to be here only, right? It is going to be in this portion of it, right? But now what will happen? The more and more my river is going to come, right? The more and more my river is going to come and hit, what will happen? We see that there will be some erosion, right? So the more my river is flowing and accumulating, what has happened? At this point, it has formed a temporary lake, right? So we see that it has formed a temporary lake here. So it will keep hitting, right? It will keep hitting and eventually some erosion will happen. So what will happen? If it keeps getting, or if it keeps forming here, or it keeps eroding the rocks, at one point one crack will happen, no? So now this will crack open and there will be a small gateway. So this image will show you better. So as you can see, this is where your water had accumulated earlier, right? Now water is accumulating and side by side it is eroding as well. So once it finds a crack, what it will do? It will reroute and it will go, right? It will find a way and it will continue to flow. Yes? Are we all clear with this? Yes or no? Bharat, kya hua? Which part have you not understood? Yes or no? Have we understood this part? Easy peasy. Menti nahi hai aaj. I am very sorry. This is simple. Very, very simple. Right? So now your river came, it encountered something, it became a brief river, right? So over a period of what happened, it formed a temporary lake. It is not a permanent lake, right? So we are talking about, again, going back, right? Dunes are not kind of river. I am not come to the point yet. So now, of course, see, you have a river. My hand is the river. This is any obstacle. Let's assume that this obstacle right here is a mountain, okay? Small, maybe like a small hill or something. So what will happen? We see that the river will come and we see that it will encounter this obstacle. Now river is nothing but where the water flows, right? When the water, now this is stopping the flow of water, right? It is stopping the flow of water. Now what will happen? Water will not stop, right? Water will not stop flowing. Or the water will be like, hey, I don't have a place to go. So let me not move forward. I'm just going to remain as it is and static. No, it's going to go and it'll start accumulating here. Wherever it finds place, water will accumulate. So eventually, in this region, it is forming a temporary lake. River is not crossing and going. But because over a period of time, it will keep hitting, right? Movement of water and everything, we see that cracks will start to develop, right? Cracks will start to develop at some point. And now what has happened? There is a change in course. Very good, right? So we see that there is a change in course of the river. And that artificial lake, right? So we see that it will find the weak rocks, especially not like any other place. It will find the weak rocks that are there and it will change its course. And eventually it'll find a gap for it'll find a gap for it to move, right? So at one point, what will happen? We see that all this water will flow and now there is an area earlier. So now what has happened? There is an area where earlier water accumulated, right? So here now it will leave behind a dry lake. So now this lake is no longer there. It is dry. This dry lake is a region what we call as dune valley, right? So this is what we call as a dune valley. So your examples like Kotli Dune, Partly Dune, Dehradun, they're all examples of the same, right? So this is just an extra pointer. Now you only need to know what is dune and you only need to know the examples. But I am telling you how it is formed. So like I said, I will not go too much into the depths of it, but I'll give you enough information for all of you to understand what is what, right? Okay. So quick question for all of you here, Dehradun is a famous dune, right? Between which of these mountain ranges is it located? Right? So between which of the mountain ranges is it located? So ma'am, region of dry valley is called as dune. Yes, Adiraj, that is what we call as that, right? And see, it is because of what especially, right? When the rivers are flowing and it's going from different mountain ranges, we know that they'll encounter them as obstacles, right? So especially from Himadri and everything, we know that when the glaciers and from there when the rivers originate, we know that especially in the two regions that we have discussed right now, we know that there is formation of this. Very good. So it is between the lesser Himalayas and the Shivaliks. The greater Himalayas are not even to be considered. Yes? Not option D, not south of the Shivaliks. See, it is between the Shivaliks and the lesser Himalayas, right? So between that we find it. Okay? Awesome. Now we will move on to the next one, which is the West-East division. So all this while we were talking about how it can be divided like this. Now we will talk about how we can divide it as from west side to the east side, right? So how will I divide it from the west side to the east side? What is my basis of division? Now earlier I was able to divide it from north to south based on various factors. Like I could be divided based on the kind of peaks that it had. I could divide it based on what was the internal composition. So I was able to do all of this. But what about from west to east, right? How am I able to divide that? Very good, right? I am able to divide this based on the presence of river valleys. So based on the presence of river valleys, I am able to do this demarcation. So based on that, I have four that are there, sorry. So I have important demarcations here, right? So I have the Punjab Himalayas, the Kumaon Himalayas, the Nepal Himalayas, Assam Himalayas, and the Purvanchal that is there, right? So first up we have Punjab Himalayas. You just need to know where to where. How will you remember where to where, right? How will you remember where to where? How will you study this? Again, draw a tabular column, right? Please, lot of tabular columns, right? So here what you will have to do, you will have to write the name of the range and you can divide this, starting from which river, ending in which river. So this way when you draw a tabular column, it will help you with revision, right? Now you'll tell me, ma'am, how to remember. I will give you some innovative ways in which you can remember towards the end. So Punjab Himalayas that are there are mainly between the Indus River and the Satluj River, right? Also called as the Kashmir Himalayas that are there because a part of it lies in Kashmir as well. And of course, we know that a portion of it is there in Himachal region. Next, we have the Kumaon Himalayas, which is there between Satluj and Kali River, mainly in the Uttarakhand region. Next up, we have the Nepal Himalayas. We know that it mainly lies in the Nepal region that is there between Kali River and Teesta River, right? And then from Teesta River all the way till the Dihang River, we have the Assam Himalayas. Yes? Then of course, last we have the Purvanchal, right? Now Purvanchal that is there is important, students, because we know that Purvanchal forms a boundary, right? It forms a boundary between what? It forms a boundary between India and what is our neighboring country there? Yes, our neighboring country is Myanmar, right? So we know that it forms a boundary here. And of course, we know that in the Purvanchal, we have various hills which are located, right? So we have different types of hills that are located. And mainly in the Purvanchal, we observe that there are sedimentary rocks that are present. And of course, there are thick forests that are there, right? So these are the important features that you need to know. Yes? Now I know. Everybody, ma'am, fold mountains are growing now also. They are growing. They are still growing. Especially the Himalayas, they are structurally unstable, right? So here we see that they are still growing here. Okay. So now, of course, we will move on to the next question, everybody. In the East-West division, which Himalayas are found between Satluj and Kali rivers? Is it our Punjab Himalayas, Kumaon Himalayas, Nepal Himalayas or Assam Himalayas? Very quickly everybody, give me the answer. Very good, all of you, very good. Ma'am, how are they still growing? Because we know that, see, due to the endogenic forces that are there, we see that there is still slight movement. As a matter of fact, in different parts of the world, it's not just the Himalayas, there are different aspects where we still see that there are slight movements that are taking place, right? Very good. So we know that between Indus and Satluj, it is our Punjab Himalayas. And between Satluj and Kali, it is our Kumaon Himalayas. And between Kali and Teesta River, it is going to be Nepal Himalayas. And between our Teesta and Dihang, yeah, it's same, Abhimanyu, both are same, right? Between that is our Assam Himalayas. Yes, it is the same thing, different name in different regions. Very good. ठीक है. So with this, students, we have finished our first mountain, our first physiographic or physical feature, that is the Himalayan mountains, right? Now I know there is a lot to remember, But when you are studying this chapter, if you see, I have given you the important kind of questions that will come. They can ask you to write down the features of the Shivaliks, or they can ask you to write down features of the lesser Himalayas. They can ask you to differentiate between greater and lesser, or lesser and Shivaliks. So in all these cases, what do you need to know? You need to remember 3 to 5 major points that we have discussed right now. And along with that, they can ask you, right? You can get MCQs based on the ones that we just discussed, right? So where will we find dunes, right? Or which river, which kind of Himalayan range is found between this river and this river. So as you can see, this right here are some important pointers that you will have to remember. So very quickly, students, on a scale of 1 to 10, are we feeling confident about this topic? Yes or no? Are we feeling confident? Notes will be available. It is going to be available tomorrow. Today it will be slightly difficult because I have back-to-back classes. But tomorrow it is going to be available, right? Yes. See, whatever you tell me, right? Always remember that our understanding of the chapter. See, when I come to teach you the chapter, it is not like when I come to teach the chapter, I know the concepts that are there. But again, how will I teach it to you so that it makes it easy? So the first time I do it, when I rehearse and I, do my practice, of course, that will only be 1 out of 10 where I'll not be happy. Then I'll come up with some examples. So then I'll have it 2 out of 10. Then slowly, I also improve on myself. Just like that, maybe your starting is just 8 or 7. But the more and more you are going to go on, you will see that you will become confident. It requires more practice, right? More revision. See, I know 20 marks objective is there for social exam, but 20 marks is not just from geography. It is going to be, again, it is across your history, civics, geography and political science. Economics and political science, right? Yes. Okay, very good. I will communicate this, right? See, revise Purvanchal. ठीक है, जल्दी जल्दी करती हूँ. Purvanchal, what is it? Purva means east, right? So we're talking about the mountain ranges on the eastern side. So here we see that it is found normally in the eastern side, right? And we know that the Purvanchal forms a boundary between our country and Myanmar. Now, of course, it includes various hills like the Mizo Hills, Naga Hills, right? So many of them are there. And along with that, what do we see? They have different kinds of rocks, like your sedimentary rocks, and they have thick forests. Yes? Now we will move on to the next one, which is going to be our northern plains, right? Now, when you talk about northern plains, so again, like I said, right? Let me tell you, let's not just read the textbook and memorize. When I say it is a plain, right? It is a plain surface. So when I tell you that it is going to be a plain surface, what comes to your mind? What is the word that comes to your mind when I say that it is a plain surface? You tell me first. Think about it yourself. So now I have some structure or some relief feature which is called as a northern plain. But what is a plain? That is what we need to know. It is a field. It is something which is smooth. Okay. Very good. See, irrespective of what your answers be, I want you to try, right? Because this is how you should learn. When you are learning things, you should not just be like, ye hai, ho gaya. Nahin. Learn it with understanding, right? Surface like that of a table, very good. Smooth surface, plain surface, flat surface, a field with no mountain, it has soil. Okay, very good. So basically, when you say smooth or flat surface, we're talking about structures which don't have a lot of relief features, right? That means that it does not have mountain or it does not have, those up and down, rugged surface, like I said, no, which is imbalance. It's not rugged. So in this case, a plain that is there are basically, they are large stretches, right? So we see that they are large stretches of flat land. And we see that these are mainly formed by the rivers and its tributaries. Yes. So we know that from the slopes when the rivers flow, right? So from the slopes when the rivers flow, we see that they carry a lot of sediments, and we know that they carry a lot of sediments and they take it forward and eventually they will settle down. And then we know that this right here, when it settles down, it also makes the land very fertile, right? So technically, quickly to go about it, We have the northern plains. Where is the northern plains located? Don't tell me, ma'am, it is located in the north, right? Because of course it is located in the northern regions, right? And we know that these are vast areas. So the northern plains is a vast area of land. And of course we know that this right here extends to about 2,400 kilometers. And the width is about 240 to 320 kilometers, right? Now we see that it spreads across to an area of 7 lakh square kilometers. That is the area it takes. And some of the early settlements that were there were across or in the northern plains. And we know early settlers, that means in the early settlements when people started to settle down, we know that they started to settle down on the banks of rivers because they saw that the banks of rivers were very fertile. So which is why we know that in these areas especially, there is extensive cultivation that takes place, right? So extensive agriculture is practiced in such areas, and we know that it is densely populated, right? So these are some important pointers that we have discussed. Now, how is the northern plains formed? Now we see that the northern plains are formed with the help of 3 river systems. So I told you, right? Because we know that in the plain regions, the rivers bring in a lot of sediments and it makes the land fertile. Here, the 3 rivers that play, or the interplay of these 3 rivers, are the ones that will help in its formation. So here we have Indus, Ganga and Brahmaputra. So here, as you can see, we know that these are the 3 rivers that are coming into the picture. Now, of course, we see that in some cases, right, we know that there is also formation of riverine islands, right? So we also see that in the Brahmaputra river, we also have riverine islands. How many of you read this point on riverine island where we have Majuli, which is there, which is one of the largest riverine island that is there, right? So we know that normally riverine islands are formed. So when there are these rivers running parallel and they split across, there's some piece of land that is there. So an island that is formed between a river is what we call as a riverine island, right? Easy peasy. Ma'am, what is riverine? See, riverine island is basically a place, right? So we see that it is a place which is formed between 2 parallel rivers, right? So that is what we mean as a riverine island. Now, of course, one more very important thing to remember, right, is that as the rivers come from the higher regions where it is sloped to flat land, even the speed at which the rivers are flowing will slow down, right? Because it's as good as if you take a ball and you put it down a slope, right? We know this is again physics which I don't need to explain, right? But we know that the speed will be more as it comes from a slope region when compared to when it moves on a flat surface, right? So we know that there is difference, and that's why we also see there is deposition that takes place. Okay? Now, of course, we will move on to the division of the northern plains. Now, students, you are asking me what are the questions that can come. The first question that can come is division of northern plains. How are the northern plains divided? So they can ask you features of northern plains, or they'll ask you to differentiate between 1 and 2 plains, right? Yes, Neha, the northern plains lies south to the Himalayas, right? Yes, you are correct. Now, I will explain riverine and delta and all of that, don't worry. Let's first cover the topic and then I will take up the extra topics, okay? And of course, those are topics we will deal in greater detail in our later chapters also, right? So this is just an introduction to all of it. So don't worry. So now, of course, we have division of northern plains. Now, we can divide the northern plains as the Punjab plains, the Gangetic plains and the Brahmaputra plains. Now, can you tell me what is the basis of dividing them into these 3? What is my basis of dividing them as Punjab plain, Gangetic plain and Brahmaputra plain? You can tell me from the name itself, right? So from the name of these plains, we know what is our basis of division. Yes? Very good, Hema, Prarthana, Astha, yes, very good. Flow of rivers. So we know that based on the rivers that are there, we are able to divide them. So first up, we have the Punjab plains. Now we know that majority of Punjab plains that is there also lies in the Pakistan region, right? And we know that it is formed by the Indus River along with its tributaries that are there. So your tributaries here include Jhelum, we have Chenab, then we have Ravi, we have the Beas River, and of course we have the Sutlej River, right? So here punch means 5 and ab here is with respect to water, right? Or we know that this is what we understand by it. Now, of course, we see that a large part of it lies in the Pakistan region, and we know that it is drained by these 5 rivers. Which is why if you see the Punjab plains that are there, especially in the region of Punjab, agriculture is very rich, right? Or we know that agriculture is a very prominent activity that takes place in Punjab. And now we know why, right? Now we know why we know that there is so much agriculture that happens. I know it's very tough to remember, right? Now you can make, see, I make up my way of, see, again, let me tell you, there are many teachers who will give you mnemonics, and there would be many teachers who will help you out in that aspect, and that's great that they're, you know, they're so innovative and they come up with such innovative things. It's just that with my way of teaching, right, it's just, I make up very funny ways of remembering. So when I talk about this, if I have to remember, say, the different tributaries of the Indus River, I'll make this up as 5 people, right? So Jhelum and Chenab were best friends, and we saw that Ravi and Bees were brothers and sisters, and we know that Satluj is their older brother. So there are like these, this is how I remember. So that is why when I tell you, I always tell you that come up with innovative ways yourself. Because the way what works for me might be easy for you, or it could be tough for you. Like, Arey ma'am, you made it more complicated, right? So I would remember that Jhelum and Chenab are best friends. Ravi and Bees are brother-sister. And I see that Satluj is their older brother. So this is ways in which you can remember the different names, right? Same thing when you come to 10th standard, I always tell you, I always make up like family kind, you know, I make up family tree, or especially to remember flowcharts. I normally do, you know, I interconnect them with like a story for me to remember, right? Yes. Awesome. So now, of course, this right here is the most important thing. Now, next up, we have the Gangetic Plains, right? Now, Gangetic Plains are very, very important. No, especially for our country. The Gangetic Plains extends to a wide region, right? So we see that it extends all the way from the Ghaggar to Teesta. And we know that it covers various states, right? So what are the states through which the Gangetic Plains will pass? You tell me. Gangetic Plains. From the map here, can you identify the states through which the Gangetic Plains would pass? We know that it would pass through Haryana. We know that it will pass through the Delhi capital region, right? Then we know that it will pass through Uttar Pradesh, and of course through parts of Bihar, and of course through, we have parts of Jharkhand also, right? Yes. Ma'am, to learn something, we have to learn beyond. Completely agreed. Only then you will remember the easy ones, right? Yes, very good. So we know that they extend up to wide region, and we know that there are various rivers, right? We know that it's not just the river basin that is, or the river system that contributes to the fertility, but we also know that the temperature conditions, right? We know that the temperature or the climate, yes? So as you can see, the climatic conditions are also very ideal for the growth or for agriculture or for intensive agriculture, right? Gangetic Plain is the largest. Yes, it is the largest plain. When compared to say Punjab and your Brahmaputra Plain, Gangetic Plain is the largest, right? Now climatic conditions are also ideal. So you can get a question, right? Why is the Gangetic Plain highly or densely populated? Or they can ask you, why is the Gangetic Plain extensively cultivated? Any of you had this particular chapter in your UT, you will definitely agree with me telling, ma'am, I got a pretty similar question, right? How many of you have got this question with respect to Gangetic Plains? I'm sure that these are the kind of questions that will come, right? And this can come as give reason questions also. So here you need to know. Another question they can ask you is why in general the northern plains are densely populated, no? So these are the possible questions they can ask you, so you can star mark these questions and keep it, right? And it will be able to help you out. Map. So map related questions, can I keep it towards the end? If you don't mind, map related questions, I will open the CBSE website and we will look at it, right? Yes, exactly. So when you're talking about, when you talk about northern plains, these are the potential questions. What is the climate? It's a very tropical, it has a very subtropical climate, my bad. So we know that this right here has a very subtropical climate, right? So it's not too hot, but it's not too cold. Temperature is pretty ideal for cultivation, right? PDF will be provided after the class. See, I have another class with 10 standards. So once I finish that class, I will upload it in the Telegram. Okay, so don't worry about the PDF. It will be available. Yes? Are we all clear? Now we will move on to the last one, which is the Brahmaputra plain, right? Now the Brahmaputra plain that is there normally lies on the eastern side, right? And of course they mainly lie in the Assam region, right? And again the river that is draining here is the Brahmaputra river that is there. Easy peasy questions, yes? Now this is the division of northern plains with respect to the river systems, right? What is Gangetic Plains? Gangetic Plains is the part of the northern plains that lies between Ghaggar and the Teesta river. And we know that mainly you have Ganga river systems and all of the other rivers which contribute to improving the fertility. We know that it passes across all these three states. What is the climatic condition? Subtropical and ideal for cultivation of various crops, right? So are we clear? Are we clear with this bifurcation? Because the next bifurcation I'm going to talk about is what is going to confuse you. Brahmaputra plains are the parts of the northern plain that lies, right? That lies down or lies in the northeast side, mainly in Assam, right? And we know that this right here is mainly, we know that this area is drained by the Brahmaputra region. Yes? I will do all this. See, you are not telling me about the chapter I am teaching. You are asking me about other things. So I am asking you all, if so far you are clear with what I have taught you. I will do island part. Why will I ignore you? Ma'am, okay, Prarthana, no problem. I will do all the chapters, yes? ठीक है, very good. Map reading, see, map reading rather than I will do it chapter wise. I'll tell you the important map topics that are there. But along with that map reading, I'd like to do separately, right? Because if I include map reading also, this class is going to go on and on forever. And considering it's me, I know for a fact that I will keep talking, right? So which is why I make it a point that I will do it maybe separately if you don't mind, right? Ma'am, kal paper hai. All the best, Shashwat. Do well. Yes. So this is one way of division. What is the division? We know that the northern plains are formed by the interplay of Indus, Ganga and Brahmaputra, right? Rivers. Now, of course, we know that on that basis, we have three plains. The Punjab plains, the Gangetic plains and the Brahmaputra plains. Punjab plains, of course, we know that although a majority of the Punjab plains lies in the Pakistan region at the moment, we also know that it includes regions in Punjab, right? And it has Indus and all the associated rivers that are there. And of course, next up we have your Gangetic plains, which we just discussed, and the Brahmaputra plains. Okay? Yes. Moving on, this is one way of dividing your plains. See, this is the easy division. The complicated division comes now, which I know you will be like, ma'am, nahi ho raha hai mujhse, I don't know what is what. Which is why I want to spend some time for the second part of it, where you are going to divide your northern plains based on relief features or some physical features that are there, right? So we have different types of plain regions. Now, just now I told you that the plain regions are flat surfaces, right? They are large flat surfaces which are normally very fertile. Then how is it that you are telling me, ma'am, there are some relief features that are there? So here if you see the northern plains, although it is a flat land with not much variation, that's actually not true. There are some slight variations which we observe. And these are the physical ways in which or the physical features by which we divide them. So if you were to course, right, if you were to trace the flow of the river, where does the river come from? The rivers that are there, they are coming from the mountains, right? So we know that they will descend, they'll come down from the mountains. And when they come down, they will reach a region, right? So we see that they will reach a region of the mountains where there are a lot of pebbles at the base, right? So we see that they will reach a lot of pebbles, and we see that this particular region is what we call as the Bhabar region, right? We see that it extends to about 8 to 16 kilometers and they lie parallel to our Shivaliks. So if this is my Shivaliks, we see that my Bhabar region is lying parallel here, right? And we see that once the rivers, right? So imagine the rivers are originating and coming. Once it comes to my Bhabar region, we see that all my rivers will slowly start to disappear, right? Yes. This is briefly mentioned. One word is mentioned in your textbook. So I don't want to leave one word unattended, right? It is briefly mentioned. Let me tell you that. Okay? So parallel to Shiva lakes, made up of pebbles brought by the rivers, right? And we see that. So they are made of pebbles which are brought by the rivers from the mountains, which extend to about 8 to 16 kilometers. And at this point, all the streams will disappear, right? So they will disappear here. Now from there, they will go to the next region, which is called as the Terai region, right? I know this is confusing. I know. Don't worry. I'll explain this once again. So then you have Terai region. So you have pebble, 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 right? Which is all these pebbles brought by the rivers, forming your Bhabar region. Yes, Bhabar region. Then you'll have a marshy spot, right? So all the streams when they come here, so this is my Bhabar region and all my streams disappeared here, okay? In this region, all my water bodies that came, no, they all disappeared. They are no longer there in this region. But whatever disappeared, and when I say they disappeared, it's not like they stopped flowing. Now they are covered by those pebbles, right? So they are underneath. So they will resurface, right? They will resurface in the next region. And what is this next region called? My next region is what we call as my Terai region. Now what is my Terai region? It is a small region which is swampy, marshy and wet, right? So because your water is coming out, so basically you imagine rocks. Think of it this way. You look at this image. This image is more than enough for all of you to understand. Look at this part. Can you all notice how big rocks and pebbles are there? Yes or no? Are you all able to notice this? You have big pebbles, yes or no? You are able to see this, right? So because of this, as you'd see, science and facts, don't worry, you listen to what I'm saying, it should be easy. So you have these big pebbles which are there. So when your water is coming from here, which is bringing all of this, eventually they disappear. But from here, when it crosses and it comes to the next side, can you look at the image here? We see that it is marshy area, very muddy and marshy, right? When does it become muddy and marshy? When water is there. So your Terai region is basically the marshy region, and it is of course having a lot of forest and wildlife, right? Because you know that rich water supply is there. So this is your Terai and your Bhabar region. Now comes your next two parts, right? Next up you have your Bhangar and Khadar regions. Students, very important part. They will ask you differentiate between Bhangar and Khadar regions. This is a short questions. Let me tell you, ye pakka aega UT mein. I am sure if this chapter was there, many of you would have got this question for either 2 marks or 3 marks, right? So star mark this point and keep it. You have your Bhangar regions and your Khadar regions, right? So what is Bhangar and Khadar? Khadar. Now, please don't mind my Hindi pronunciations. It could be wrong. So, I already asked for apologies in the beginning. Now, see, your Bhangar region, as you, see, it's come for 4 marks. So, like I said, what kind of questions you will get also, I will discuss in the class today. So, as you can see, this is your Bhangar region, right? And as you can see, it is showing towards a little bit Bhangar or Bhangar. My pronunciation could 95% be wrong because they are Hindi words, right? So, it could be Bhangar regions as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's Bhangar regions. ठीक है, Bhangar. Anyway, coming back, we have our Bhangar regions that are there, and we see that this forms the largest part of the northern plains, right? So we see that this forms the largest part. Now, once your rivers cross your Terai region and it comes, right? So once it crosses your Terai regions, we see that eventually it brings in a lot of soil, it brings in a lot of different kind of silt and brings in a lot of things. Yes, so we see that it brings in soil which has a lot of calcareous deposits. That means these are deposits which are rich in calcium, and they are forming, they'll be like small as a chotu sa ball like structures which we call as kankar. So as you can see this right here, we see that they lie above the flood plains. Now what is a flood plain? Everybody will be like, ma'am, I'm done. Nahi ho raha hai abhi. Too much. Don't worry. Pause this video if you're watching this video later. You can pause this video right now, take a break, and then come back and watch also, because I know sometimes it becomes overwhelming to learn so many terms. But basically, floodplains are a region wherein your rivers that are there, they'll end up bringing silt, they'll bring clay, right? And of course, we know that they will have alluvial deposits, right? So they'll be bringing in all of this, and they bring it almost every year, and they keep depositing it, right? So they will keep depositing it, which is why when they bring, so think of it this way, river went underneath your Bhabar region, came out in Terai, now abhi it is flowing. Now when it is flowing, it is moving into your plains, right? Now it has reached your plain region. Now plains may, when they will bring, what will they bring? Your river is bringing so many kinds of things. It's bringing silt, which are fine particles of soil. It is getting alluvial deposit. It is bringing so many things, right? So they will all bring these depositions. So when they bring these depositions, what will happen? We know that they will all start to settle down, right? So they will all start to settle down. And this part that you see here is what we call as the Bhangar region, right? So wherein we see that the soil has a lot of, the soil that is there has a lot of old alluvial soil. Exactly. And it has kankar, small nodules which has calciums in it, right? Now, of course, we see that this is when every year your river will bring. Not like river will come and stop. Every year the river is continuously flowing, right? So more and more depositions are coming. So when more and more depositions are coming, some new depositions will come. So see, this year if some depositions has come, over a period of time, next year also the river will bring deposition. So what came in 2022 is now old, while what the river has brought me recently is new. So the newer deposition which is brought by my river is what you call as the Khadar region, right? And we know that this has relatively newer alluvium soil. It is extremely fertile, very good for intensive agriculture. Now you will tell me, ma'am, what is this? You have just explained with image. Don't worry, we have a tabular column, right? So we see that Bhangar is formed when in the past, right? So it is, I told you 2022 and 23, that is very, very oversimplified explanation. But normally in the years before, right? So we're talking about much, much earlier. So years wise, I gave you a simple analogy, but we're talking about way in the past, right? So way in the past, when the Himalayan rivers were changing its course, we see that Bhangar soil was formed, or Bhangar region was formed. While here in the Khadar region, it is little more recent times of deposition. Where is it found? We see that Bhangar is located away from the rivers, having a terrace-like structure. While we see that Khadar region is found closer to the floodplains, where what are floodplains? Regions wherein your soil or your river is bringing all these compositions, right? Now age of alluvial soil is older here, while it is younger in Khadar region. Kankar is more in Bhangar region, and lower molecules of kankar nodules here. Relatively less fertile, relatively more fertile. So everybody take a quick screenshot. Kankar are basically calcareous, calcium-filled nodules, right? So these are the calcareous nodules that are there. Yes? Okay. Yes. So see, the chapter is simple. And this particular question can come for 5 marks. And if it comes for 5 marks, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points to write, right? So write it in this manner so that it becomes very easy. Yes? Okay. Now quick question. Which relief feature is closest to the Shivalik region? Ma'am, due to Kankar, the river will not be blocked. Kankar is small, but it's not huge rocks that will block it, right? They are relatively smaller structures. So is it the Bhangar, Terai, Babhar or Khadar? All these Hindi pronunciations are taking mine, it is testing me. Super. Very good, all of you. Correct answer is option C. Shivalik region, You had the big pebbles, that was your Bhabur region. Then you had marshy area, which was your Terai region. Then you saw that once your rivers come, we know that eventually at one point, we know that they would have taken one course, then they would have changed their course due to multiple reasons. So what will happen? The terrace-like feature that is formed is your Bhangar, and then inside is your Khadar region, right? And we know the differences between these two. So on a scale of 1 to 10, right? मैम स्पेलिंग में कंफ्यूज हो गया, कोई नहीं, होता है कभी कभी. Scale of 1 to 10, we know the important topics from northern plains, and are we all clear? Yes? Abhimanyu, you can come back and watch, no problem. Are we all clear with this? Yes or no? Now, in your textbooks, if you see, I have given you all the important topics, all the potential questions also, right? What they can ask you, how they can ask you. So this is very simple. Looks like it's a lot, okay, but it's not. It's very easy only. There are some topics which can be a little bit too, you may struggle to understand, but don't worry. Come back, watch the video much later. Maybe we'll do a little more practice. So when I'm doing one shots, it always becomes very difficult, because if I want to go in depths and depths of everything, right, for each and every aspect, I'd always love to tell you the story behind why we call it what. So it becomes very difficult for me sometimes with one shot classes, right? Or else I'll need to take like a 4 or 5 hour one shot. Maybe we'll do a geography marathon where I'll go in super details and the fine aspects. But this is very with respect to your, your half yearlies, right? So for your half yearlies, whatever I'm telling you are the important topics. Yes? No problem, Gungun. No problem. No issues. ठीक है. Now we will move on to the next aspects. Don't worry, Shashwat. You will do it. Next one we're going to discuss is the Peninsular Plateau, right? Now, Peninsular Plateau region, if you've read the chapter, it's a very simple topic. But again, there's a lot of bifurcations to remember, right? So you have a lot of categorization and classification, which you will have to remember what is what. Yes? Now, I am from Karnataka, right? And normally, if you see, when we talk about it, we say that maybe let's say a person from Maharashtra, or maybe a person who is there in the northern parts of the Karnataka especially, we say that we're part of the plateau region that is there. So what is a plateau? So you see, mountain and plain is very easy, right? Mountain means, okay, tall structure, has lot of height. Now we know the more technical aspects of it, right? Then we have peninsular plateau. Peninsula we know, right? So peninsula that is there is a structure or a landmass which is covered by water on 3 sides. But what is a plateau? Very good. Yes, very, very good. Plateau that is there is a tableland, right? Yes, very good. It is a tableland. So literally, if you see a plateau that is there is again a flat land, right? So it is an extensive area of flat upland. So this is how a plateau would look like. So it's flat, but it is a upland, right? And it is bounded by steep slope on all the sides, right? So we see that it is bound by steep slope on all the sides. Now, how is a plateau formed? Now, there are again various ways for which a plateau is formed. But how exactly is that a piece of land suddenly became tall and it is steeping on the sides? So how exactly did that happen? How did the flat land rise up? What is the reason behind it? So again, like I said, there's a lot of internal forces, right? So we know that there are various internal forces. And the magma that is there. Yes, that is also their mine of facts, but more than that, I would say that it is because of magma. So what happens is that in some regions, magma that is there will try to, from deep within, right? So from deep within, the magma will try to push up, right? So the magma that is there, it will try to push up and come towards the surface, but it will fail. Now when that happens, we see that instead what will happen, because the magma is trying to do this, it will push up or it will lift that piece of impermeable land, right? It was not able to come out, so the land is impermeable, right? So as a result, it will push the large, flat, impenetrable land above it. So this is what we understand as a plateau, or how plateaus are formed. Again, like I said, very oversimplified explanation of how a fat plateau is formed. Ma'am, then why was mountain not formed? See, we discussed a mountain that was there is formed by the folding. Now here, of course, it is impenetrable. No, it's not like magma has so much power that it will push and it will form mountain, right? So we know that how much ever to to some or a certain extent, your flat land was elevated, right? Now the elevation, which we will discuss right now, is not, now when you compare your mountains to the elevation in a plateau region, it is much different, right? The elevation or the height is different. So that is what you need to understand. You can say it is table land, or you can use this definition that it is an extensive area of flat upland, right? So again, with respect to the peninsular plateau especially, we see that it is a stable landmass, and of course it has great thickness as well. Now mainly if you look at what kind of rocks we find here, we find a lot of old crystalline and igneous rocks. Now this again is a very important aspect. Now we know that igneous rocks are mainly formed by the cooling or solidification of lava, right? And we often call them, or they are often called as the primary rocks, which is why a large proportion of the igneous rocks are found in the peninsular plateau region. And again, we see that it's roughly triangular in shape, right, with a height of about 300 to 900 meters. You look at the Himalayan ranges, we were discussing in thousands. Here we're discussing in hundreds, right? And how am I saying it is elevated to 300 or 900 meters? So if this is my sea, from my sea level, this is the elevation, right? So this is what we understand by this. And why is it called as a peninsular plateau? Because we know that it is part of the peninsular land that is surrounded by water on three sides. Old crystalline, crystalline means it's with respect to the rocks, right? So we see that they are crystalline rocks. That means you have crystals on the surface, crystal-like structures, and the date of it is pretty old, right? It's as simple as that. Now, how did our plateau form? Now we saw that our mountains were formed when our two plates collided, resulting in the folding process. But what about the plateau? We saw that India that was there was part of the Gondwana land, right? It was part of our Gondwana land. Then when Gondwana land broke down, we saw that there was movement of the Indo-Australian plate. Now, of course, as a result, we also saw that there was collection of lava that happened at the base, right? So, over a period of time, we saw that there was collection of lava at the base of it. And eventually, we see that all that lava, eventually when it was trying to push up, it resulted in the formation, right? And we saw that eventually, this led to the formation of the peninsular plateau. And of course, we know that in that process, there was formation of igneous rocks and so on and so forth. Yes? So this is the idea that is there behind it. Now, our peninsular plateau can be divided into two, right? It can be divided into the Deccan Plateau and the Central Highlands. Now, your Central Highlands are the northern part, right? It is there in the northern part, while the Deccan Plateau that is there is mainly there towards the southern part of the plateau. Easy peasy. So far, you're able to follow? So far, yes, no, ma'am, nahi ho raha hai. What is the, how are we at? Are we able to follow this? Yes? No problem, you can watch it later, absolutely no issues, right? Ma'am, it is so difficult. ठीक है, what part of it are you finding it difficult? See, like I said, with this chapter, you need a lot of reading. Consistent reading needs to happen, right? Consistent reading needs to happen. So far, what did we see? We know that a plateau that is there is an elevated flat upland, right? So when it is elevated, it is flat upland. Yes? Now, how is it formed? Formation, I'll make it simple. Magma when it is trying to push, right? So when magma is trying to come out, these rocks are impenetrable. Magma is not able to come out, right? Which is why what will happen? We see that the land is getting pushed up, right? So there's an elevation that is happening. So that's how you're eventually, so a simplified version is that's how the plateaus are generally formed. But that is one aspect of formation. Plateaus are formed in various ways. Let me stress on that. Now we have our first, we will discuss Central Highland, right? Now if I say it is a Central Highland, again look at it very simply, right? Think of it very simply. Central means it is central, in the central part of my country, right? So my central part of my country includes what all states? Remember that. You know where what state is present. That much we all know, right? So central states include states like our central part includes states like Madhya Pradesh, so on, and the surrounding states that are there. So now if you look at the Central Highlands, it is present below the Gangetic Plain, right? So we see that the Central Highland that is there, it is present below the Gangetic Plain. Now we know where a Gangetic Plain is, right? So it is present below my, so this is my Gangetic plain means below that I will find it, below that and above or in the north of the Narmada river. So it is present where? North of Narmada river. Now the central highland will extend, right? So we see that it will extend all the way from the Malwa plateau in the west to the Bundelkhand plateau all the way to the Bhagelkhand plateau, right? And we see that the Malwa plateau that is there, we see that it is bordered by the Aravalli range, right? And which side is it bordered by Aravalli range? We see that Aravalli range is there towards the west, right? So this is there towards the west of the Malwa plateau. While we see that the Vindhya ranges that are there are present, right? We see that the Vindhya ranges that are there also flank it towards the southern part that is there. And we also see that towards the later part, we also see the Rajmahal hills, right? So these are all the extensions that are there. Now, of course, we see that it also extends a little beyond to the Chota Nagpur plateau also, and we know that the Chota Nagpur plateau is also very, very important because the Chota Nagpur plateau is where the Damodar river is there, and we know that it is rich in mineral sources. Now again, when we talk about our central highlands, right? We know that the central highland that is there, of course, lies towards the north of Narmada, but it is drained, right? It is drained by various rivers. Very good. So it has Chambal, Sindh, Betwa and Ken. Now, if you notice, we see that in the case of this particular central highland, we see that they are higher and wider. So we see that they are higher and wider on the western side and they gradually slope down, right? So we see that they gradually become low and narrow as they go towards the eastern side, right? So it's not like it is like a tabletop per se, right? It is not perfectly a tabletop, but rather it is something like this, right? This is how the plateau would look like. So as you can see, it is higher on the west and it is sloping, right? So you could almost say that it is sloping towards the eastern side. So if it is sloping, which direction will the river flow from? Which direction is the river going to flow from? Can you tell me? Yes, in which direction will it flow if it is sloping on one direction? Yes, very good. Is it lagging? I think it should be fine now. Very good. So it was going to go from the western side, right? So from the west to the east, or I would say more specifically from the southwestern region, right? So if you look at these rivers, so from the southwest, it will drain all the way to the eastern side, right? So that is how, or to the northeastern side. So that is the region that it is going to drain towards. Yes? Now, of course, like I said, the Chota Nagpur plateau, we know that the Damodar river drains into the Chota Nagpur plateau. So that is another name you need to know. And we know that the Chota Nagpur plateau covers parts of Jharkhand. And again, like I said, it is extensive, right? So Jharkhand, Odisha, West Bengal, these are some states that the Chota Nagpur plateau covers. Very rich in a lot of rivers, right? Ma'am, why do many rivers drain into Bay of Bengal? For the very same reason. So as we cover Deccan Plateau also, you will understand that the sloping is from west to east, right? And here also in the central highlands, it's from west to east, which is why due to the sloping nature, it is draining towards the Bay of Bengal, right? Easy peasy. So these are the features. Now what kind of question will come? They may ask you to elaborate the features of the central highland. So features is what you need to remember in all the cases. I know it's a little bit to remember, there's a lot to remember, but again, draw tables, right? Draw tables, write down the states which are incorporated, and if you put these down, right? So this way it will be able to help you out. Ma'am, why Narmada? Narmada is where we are able to bifurcate it as Deccan Plateau, and of course we are able to bifurcate it into the central highland region, right? Now, of course, next up we have the Deccan Plateau. Now, the Deccan Plateau is the portion that is a triangular mass that lies to the south of Narmada, right? So, your central highlands are towards the top of Narmada, while your Deccan Plateau is there, it lies towards the south of Narmada, right? Easy peasy. Now we see that the Deccan Plateau that is there is flanked, right? Now what do I mean by flanked? It means that it is surrounded, right? So we see that it has the Western Ghats on the western side and it is Eastern Ghats on the eastern side. Yes, Shashwat, some things you have to remember, right? So your Deccan Plateau has your Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats. Now understand that this particular point is very, very important because in the exam they can ask you to differentiate between the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats. So we are going to be learning this as well. So not to worry about it. Now if you look at it, we have the Deccan Plateau, which is a triangular part. Now on top we have the Satpura range here, right? So we have the Satpura range which is there in the north part and that demarcates it. On the west you have the Western Ghat that demarcates it. On the east you have the Eastern Ghats. Very good, Ajay, very good. Now along with this, if you look at it, right, a little towards the north, if you just go a little bit to the north and towards the northeastern sides, we have the hills like the Mahadev Hills, the Kaimur Hills, and which is there in Madhya Pradesh, and of course we have the Maikal range that is there towards in the border of Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh region that forms its external, or I would say it forms its eastern extensions, right? So northern and eastern extensions that are there. Are we clear? Are we all clear with this? North is Satpura, which forms the northern base. Then you have your eastern extension with these hills, right? Okay. Now one thing you need to understand is that again in the case of the Deccan Plateau, right? Deccan Plateau also slightly tilted. So we see that the western side tends to have a higher elevation than compared to your eastern side, which is why rivers like Godavari, Krishna, all of them drain towards the eastern side, right? Now we also see that there is a portion of the Deccan Plateau that extends a little beyond, right? So a portion of it has a northeastern extent. So now most of it is located below your Narmada region, but a portion of it is found in the northeastern side, right? What is there in the northeastern side? Basically your Meghalaya Plateau. So your Meghalaya or Karbi Anglong Plateau and the North Churchill Hills, they are all some extensions of it. Now you will be telling me, no, ma'am, you told me Deccan Plateau is there in the southern region, right? Mainly includes states of Maharashtra, Karnataka, portions of Andhra, Telangana. Now you'll tell me, ma'am, how northeastern extent, right? Now exactly how did this happen? How many of you are wondering this? Kaise hua ye? How exactly did a portion of the plateau get detached? So it's technically, as you can see, a portion of the plateau has gotten detached and it's gone somewhere else. Now, how did this detachment happen? Now, this detachment happened during the formation of the Himalayas, right? So, during the formation of Himalayas, what happened? We saw that as our, Indo-Australian plate was moving towards our Eurasian plate, right? So this was moving and we see that there is the Eurasian plate and this collided. We saw that as a result of that collision, there was so much force that got exerted, and as a result, we saw that there was a fault line or a crack that came across, right? So what happened? There was a slight separation that happened here at this point, right? Now, years later, of course, this fault line was filled with rivers and all this depression was filled. The fault line or the depressed area where the crack had occurred, not crack, but the fault line had occurred, we see that it was filled up with water, which is why eventually they got separated out. Now, some important hill ranges here are your Garo Hills, Kasi Hills, and your Jayantiya Hills, right? Jayantiya Hills. Yes. So much pushing and separation. Yes. So how about I do one thing? After I finish this, right? So once I finish off the Deccan Plateau and the Deccan Trap, I'll give you a small break, right? We'll finish off Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats and I'll give you a small break. I'll start my next class earlier. Until I finish this chapter, I am not stopping the class, right? So I'll make it a point that we finish off this chapter and then we will make it a point that I will go to my next class. So 10th graders, I may move your class by some time, right? Are we good to go? Shall I then give you a small break so that your head is not going to break and you will not feel like, ma'am, everything is just going above my head. You are just stating facts and going. Should not be like that, no? Yes. Very good. Okay. Now, of course, we know that this is the extension, right? So, as we all know, this right here is the extension that is there. The northeastern extension. So, this is again location and extent of the Deccan Plateau. But now, of course, one of the most features or one of the key features in the plateau region is what we see is the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats, right? Now, we see that Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats form the western and eastern sides or form the borders respectively, right? Now, the Western Ghats that are there, right? I will tell you the longitudinal divisions. Just give me one moment. Let me finish. Now, let me tell you that the Western Ghats that are there are more or less, or I'll say mostly continuous. Now, of course, we think that they are continuous, but it's mostly continuous. And there are these small gaps which are present in these regions, right? So, we see that there are small gaps which are present in these regions, which we call as passes. So, gaps which are present in a mostly continuous line or passes in the range that you see, gaps that you see in the ranges are what we call as passes, right? So, we see that in the Western Ghats, there are various types of passes that are there, right? So, we have the Tal Ghat, Pal Ghat, they are all examples of the same. Now, when you talk about the Western Ghats, right, they are mostly continuous and they have an average height of 900 to 1600 meters. So, we see that it starts, right? So, we see that it starts all the way from the north and it extends southwards till Kerala. Now, of course, if you talk about it, right, we know that some of the highest peaks that are there is in the southern regions. So, we see that from the north as we go south, right, we see that the peaks ka height increase. So, highest peaks are normally located towards the southern regions. Yes? So, in this case, what do we see? We see that the Anamudi peak, right? Anamudi peak that you see in Kerala is the highest peak in Western Ghats. While on the other hand, even Doddabetta peak that is there in Tamil Nadu near Ooty region, that is also an important peak. Yes? Now again, what do you need to remember? You will have to remember the average height, how they are mostly continuous, what is the location, so on and so forth, right? Now next up, we see that the Western Ghats have a very important role to play, right? The Western Ghats have a very important role to play, especially when it comes to rainfall, right? So here we see that especially when it comes to rainfall, the Western Ghats have an important role to play. So as you can see, especially with the type of rainfall that we see here is called as orographic rainfall. Fancy name for a very simple process. Okay? So if this is my Western Ghats, right? So let me make a simple mountain. This is my Western Ghats, right? What lies on this side of the Western Ghats? If I move towards the west of Western Ghats, what sea will I find here? I'll find my Arabian Sea. Right? So as you can see, Arabian Sea that is there is found here. Now in this particular process, what happens? We know that a lot of winds, right? So we see that there will be a lot of winds that will bring moisture laden air. So here the winds that come from this region will have a lot of moisture. So when it comes here or it will strike the Western Ghats, what will happen? We see that a lot of downpour will be here, right? So we see that there will be a downpour of rainfall. So in the the western part of Western Ghats receives a lot of downpour. While what will happen? By the time it reaches the ranges which are there towards the east, right? Or by the time they cross these hills, the eastern side will receive relatively less amount of rainfall. So we see that this gets sandwiched here at some point, which is why this type of rainfall is what we call as orographic rainfall, right? Now, of course, as a result, right, because of its location, because of how much rainfall is there, Western Ghats is richly supplied, or we would say rich biodiversity. We see that a lot of endemic species That means there are some animals which are found only in the Western Ghats and nowhere else, right? And if you do get the time, please do visit this. There was a beautiful picture that I had clicked of the Western Ghats, but sadly I could not have time to show it to all of you. But let me tell you that, of course, again, when you are at that kind of elevation, when you see that kind of diversity and greenery, it is very, very peaceful, right? Yes, yes, it does, Astha. Climate chapter, soon I shall try. Next up, of course, we have the Eastern Ghats, right? Now, Eastern Ghats are again towards the eastern side and they're not continuous like the Western Ghats, right? So, we see that it stretches all the way from the Mahanadi Valley, right? So, it stretches from the Mahanadi Valley all the way to the Nilgiris in the south, right? And here, of course, we see that they are discontinuous. That means they are not continuous at all. Now, of course, we see that they are also very irregular and they are dissected. That means that there are breaks in between where the rivers are draining into the Bay of Bengal. Now, of course, here we see that when we talk about the peaks, the highest is the Mahendragiri peak that is there in the Eastern Ghats, while Anamudi peak is the highest in the Western Ghats, right? And Nilgiri Hills is the place where your Western and Eastern Ghats meet. So as you can see here, these are the important points that we need to cover. So 4 points of difference you need to know between your Western and Eastern Ghats. Yes? See, Eastern Ghats ko dekho, ye discontinuous line hota hai. It's irregular and there are points where your rivers are draining as well. Now here the average elevation is not much, right? So if you look at the average elevation, it is somewhere, it is not more than, it's between somewhere between 900, not 900, sorry. It is roughly around 600 meters, right? So the average elevation is not very high, right? Which is why in this case we see that these are the main points of difference between your Western and Eastern Ghats. Yes? So now, of course, students, the last topic after which I'll give you a 5-minute break is the Deccan Trap, right? Now, what is this Deccan Trap? It's not a trap per se, but basically we know that in the Deccan region, in the Deccan Plateau region, the prominent soil, right? The prominent soil that is there is the black soil, right? And we see that because it is having black soil region, we call this as the Deccan Trap. Now, why is it so? We know that in this area is formed as, or there is volcanic origin here. So the rocks are, of course, we know rocks that we find here are igneous, right? And over a period of time, they have undergone erosion or weathering process, resulting in the formation of your black soil. Now, normally we know that this is again bordered, right, by the Aravalli Hills on the western side. And of course, that borders the Peninsular Plateau. So this right here is important for you to know that in the Deccan Trap region, because of its position, because of its origin, we have a lot of black soil in this particular region. Okay? Now, so far, are we clear? Broken are discontinuous hills, bacha. That's all. It's discontinuous. It's as simple as that, right? Are we all clear? Longitudinal divisions of the Himalayas include your north to south, right? So that is mainly, I'll go back to that image so that you can take a screenshot. So let me quickly go back to where we discussed that. Yes, I think it's here. So longitudinally, when we divide it, right, north to south, we have outer, middle and inner Himalayas, or you have your greater Himalayas, lesser Himalayas and the Shivaliks, right? So students, everybody take a 5-minute break right now. Class 10 students who are here, I might delay your class by 20 minutes. Right? So by 20 minutes, I might be delaying your class because I am giving class 9 students a 5-minute break and I will take your class after that. So resuming at 7:08. Yes? Hello everybody, we are back, right? We are back and I hope you are feeling refreshed. I hope you got a good break, a good pause in between all this information that we are learning. See, every time you are at any point, whenever you are studying, take a break, which means that later on if you watch this video also, take a break. Don't study at one stretch, because especially with geography, it requires a lot of time, it requires revising, and it requires a little bit of concentration, right? It's very easy to get distracted. So that is why I know that, ma'am, maybe now when you are teaching me, I'm not understanding. I'm not able to follow you. So it's okay. There are two reasons this could happen. One is sometimes you may not be able to respond to the way I teach. Or secondly, what would happen is you might have not read the chapter properly. So as and when I am describing, it is becoming too much, right? So what you need to do, pause the video. First, learn what you have studied. Go through the textbook properly. Underline all the important pointers. Whatever you've not understood after reading, watch the video. Learn those points, right? So that way, if you see, I've broken down the components, right? See, like I said, I want to go too much in detail, but again, if I go too much into detail, you will be like, "Arey ma'am, at this point to learn live or maybe much later, it could be too much." So on an exam point of view, I'm telling you whatever is necessary. So are we ready to do the last three topics? Last three topics are very easy. Very, very easy topics, right? Very simple. Indian desert, coastal plains and islands. Map work है ये chapter में, मैं बताती हूँ कौन सा map work आपको करना है. But how to do map work, I might do a separate class, right? Because I have another class in 20 minutes. So I will try to wind it up in 20 minutes. Yes? So are we ready? I hope you're all excited. On a scale of 1 to 10, despite however big this chapter is, let me tell you, you have covered the majority of the chapter. The big bulky portions of the chapter are over. Now we are left with the chotu sa easy parts, right? And by the time we cover the Peninsular Plateau, you would have understood that there is a pattern, right? There is a pattern to which the kind of questions will come, and of course to the type in which you will have, maybe how to make your notes, right? Or how exactly to do. So we will go through all of it. So not to worry. Now you have an idea that this is what they will be giving you. This is what I have to study. So now you have got that idea. Okay? Now we will move on to the next topic, which is the Indian desert, right? Now, me being a science teacher also, right? I always tell you that when I approach some topics, I always have a biological angle, right? I always have some biology angle to it. So whenever we learn about deserts, what are the things that come to our mind? Again, let's go back to thinking about what comes to our mind. See, when you talk about desert, I'll think about extreme climate, right? So we'll think about extreme climate. So we've learned about how extreme climatic conditions are there. Sand, lots and lots of sand that is there, right? So we know that sand that is there is fine, and of course we know that it is very porous also. Then we think about the animals. We know that there will be camel, there is cactus. Then of course we also think about the fact that there is not enough rainfall, right? So as you can all see, we know that there is not enough rainfall. Now what is the desert in India called as? This is almost a very redundant question to ask, but I will still ask you, what is the name of the desert that is there in our country? A beautiful desert which is located in the state of Dash. The Indian desert, which is also called as the Thar desert. Exactly. So we have the Thar desert, which is located in the state of Dash. Exactly. So we know that this is located in the state of Rajasthan. So if you were to look at the exact location, right? So we know that the Thar desert that is there is normally present on or lies towards the western margin of the Aravalli ranges, right? And of course we know that on the northern side it is covered with the Punjab, or it shares its border with the Punjab plains. Now we know that this particular region does not receive enough rainfall. So we see that this region receives very little rainfall, right? And we know that this region has a very dry, extreme conditions, right? So very rainfall with extreme temperatures. So we know that normally in these areas, the average temperature is about 45 and 50 degrees, right? Which is why in this particular case, what do we see? The climate is pretty arid, and we know that this area has very little vegetation, okay? Now, of course, we know that in this particular place, why is it that we have a desert? I mean, there is plains on top, and we know that there is northern plains here, we have the plateau region here. But why exactly is it that in this particular location, we have very less rainfall? Now, that's also because of various climatic conditions, right? So, we know that firstly, we have the desert that is formed in this region because this area specifically receives very little rainfall. So, the amount of rainfall or rain that falls from the east to the west, right? So, we see that there is very little rainfall in general that is received in the Rajasthan region due to multiple factors. So, which is why we see that over a period of time, it has resulted in the formation of deserts. Yes? It is due to the winds. Exactly, it's due to the winds. Very good, very good. So now we know that in those regions, it's very difficult. No, it's very, very difficult. And over a period of time, it has resulted in desertification or the formation of deserts that has happened. Yes? Now, of course, we see that along with that, we know that there is very little scanty vegetation. Now, there are some months. It's not like there is no rain. There are some months where there is scanty rainfall. And when scanty rainfall happens, what will happen? We know that some small streams will appear, right? So, small streams will appear during the rainy season, right? But soon enough, we know that it will disappear also, right? But despite all that, what do we see? We see that despite all this, there is a river that flows, right? So we know that there is a river that flows through it, which is the Luni River, which is the only large river that we find in this region that extends to about 530 kilometers. Scanty means very little, okay? So far, are we clear? Somebody is like, Bharat is like, ma'am, I am not understanding. But if you tell me what you don't understand, I will teach that again, right? Yes. Kindly refrain from having parallel conversations because I want to finish it off. I don't want to rush. But at the same time, I want to make it clear for all of you, right? Yes, very good, very good. Now, of course, over a period of time, the most characteristic thing about the deserts are the sand, right? And we see that sand dunes are formed here. So, whenever you picture a desert, you will picture something like this. No? You will think about something like this, large areas of sand, which will look to be something like this. Now, what we call this kind of an appearance, these small hill-like structures that you see, they are the sand dunes that are there. Now, how are sand dunes formed? We know that when wind blows, the sand is also blown away, right? And eventually at one point when the wind stops blowing, right? Or when the pace reduces, all the sand will settle down. So when the sand will settle down, what will it form? It will form a sand dune, right? So these deposits, small mountain-like things you see, these are the sand dunes. And sand dunes that are there, they are temporary structures. So what are sand dunes? Sand dunes are temporary mountain-like structures made of sands which are formed with the help of wind, right? So that are what are sand dunes. Now, of course, the way the wind blows and how the sand settles down, we know that there are two, patterns that come, right? So, one, of course, is the crescent-shaped pattern that we see, right? So, especially in Jaisalmer region, we know that these crescent-shaped patterns are there, which is what we call as Barchan, right? So, Barchan covers a large area of it, where we have these crescent-shaped patterns, okay? While some of it will be long, which we call as longitudinal. Now, where do we find them? Normally in the India-Pakistan region, in the border region especially, we see that it will be in the form of longitudinal, long patterns. So, what are sand dunes? Sand dunes are temporary structures, mountain-like structures, right? Now, they can be formed or the pattern could be either crescent shape or they could be they could be longitudinal, right? Very simple. Easy peasy. Are we clear with this? Are we clear? You need to know climatic conditions. You need to know the river, right? It is Luni River. Please tell me your name. I cannot call that out loud. Who's asking me the name of the river in Rajasthan? It is Luni River, right? Indian desert may short, they'll ask you short note for 3 marks, right? So when you're writing short note for 3 marks, you will have to talk about the location, right? What is found where? So you'll have to talk about Punjab Plains, Aravalli Ranges. You'll have to talk about climate. Then you will also have to talk about the river, right? So you can talk about Luni River. Then of course, in case if they ask you to elaborate on sand dunes, you can elaborate. So they can normally ask you what are Burchans, right? So they'll just ask you maybe 1 or 2 marks, not more than that. So, or what shape is there in a Burchan sand dune, right? So they may ask you that. Yes? Mehak Preet, thank you. Now we will move on to the last 2 बहुत simple topics on coastal plains and islands, right? So first we will discuss the coastal plains that are there. Now coastal plains, right? That means that these are the plains or these are regions which are located in the coast or in the boundaries that are there, right? So we know that the coastal plains that are there are normally found on the boundaries here or in this particular region. Yes, and we know that they are mainly in the Indian Peninsular region. It is divided into western coast and eastern coast, right? Now the western coast is located in the west side. Now where exactly is it found? It is present, right? So we see that this is present between the, if this is my Western Ghats, so here I have my Western Ghats. Here I have my Arabian Sea. The region that is present between the Western Ghats and the Arabian Sea is what I call as my Western Coastal Plain, right? So we see that it extends all the way from the Run of Kutch in Gujarat to Kanyakumari in Tamil Nadu. And this is a very narrow plain, right? So we know that this right here is a very narrow plain. Now this western coastal plain is again divided into 3 regions. Now this you need to know, this is very, very important, right? This is 3 important things. They can ask you how is the western coastal plains divided or what are the 3 parts that make up the western coastal plain. So please star mark this point in your textbook. So you have the northern part, right, which is called as the, you have the Konkan coast, right? Sorry. Today, for some reason, I'm not able to write proper spellings. You have the Konkan coast, which is between your Maharashtra and Goa region, right? That is the Konkan coast. Then it is the Kannad coast, right? Kannad coast that is there, or the Kannad plain rather, I would say. So the Kannad plain that extends along Karnataka. And then we have the Malabar coast, right? So again, remember this easily. Malabar coast, which is along the side or stretches across Kerala. Easy way to remember. Aishwarya ma'am is from Bangalore, right? Bangalore is in Karnataka. That means Aishwarya ma'am, if she has to go to coastal plain, she will go to Kannad coastal plain. But her family is from Kerala, which means that if Aishwarya ma'am's family has to go to Kerala, they will go to Malabar coast, right? Then, easy way. Tomorrow, if I want to take a trip with my best friends, if I want to go to Goa, which coast will I go to? I will go to Konkan coast, right? So keep stories like this in mind. Aaram se ho jayega. Ye teenon ka you need to know the location, right? They can get you MCQ questions also. This, the coast that is present between Maharashtra and Goa is dash. And you have to identify the correct answer. So these are ways in which you will be able to remember. Next, of course, we see that we have the eastern coastal plains. Now, eastern coastal plains are again found on the eastern shores, right? So, we see that it extends all the way from the, across West Bengal, Odisha, and again reaches to the southernmost point, right? Now, of course, we know that this can again be divided into 3. So, now, of course, we see that the eastern coast, unlike your western coast. Now, if you saw your western coastal plains were very narrow, but your eastern coastal plains are a little more wider, right? And it has larger surface area. And we see that it has a northern part, which is the northern circus, and the southern part, which is the Coromandel coast, right? So, these are the 2 things that are there. Now, of course, we see that in the eastern coastal plains, there are various deltas also. So, rivers like Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, Kaveri, they all come and they form the deltas. And we know that deltas form very fertile lands that are again very beneficial for agriculture. Now, apart from this, we also see that there are larger saltwater lakes like the Chilika Lake that is there in the state of Odisha. Now, last topic is of course the islands, right? Now, which are the now islands that are there are basically landforms which are surrounded by water on all sides. So, how is an island different from a peninsula? Peninsula mein water is surrounded in 3 sides. Then what about in the case of islands? Islands mein water is surrounded on all sides. What are the 2 prominent islands of our country, or which is associated with which is a part of our country, not associated, but part of it? It is the Andaman and Nicobar Islands and the Lakshadweep Islands, right? Now, Andaman and Nicobar, right? We know that Andaman and Nicobar Islands are situated in the Bay of Bengal. And it's not a single island, but rather it is a group of islands that are present, right? And we know that the Andaman is in the northern region while Nicobar is in the southern part. And we know that Andaman has very rich biodiversity that is there. Various different kinds of, whether it be aquatic organisms or whether it be, land animals that we find. Andaman and Nicobar Islands have a lot of biodiversity, right? And along with that, these islands are a little more closer to the equator, which is why they have a little more of a tropical climate. Yes? While on the other hand, Lakshadweep, that is there, Lakshadweep Islands, they are found in the Arabian Sea, right? And we see that they are also a group of islands, and we know that in this particular case, they are found closer to Kerala, right? Closer to the Malabar coast. Now we know that it covers a small area of land, around 32 kilometers per square kilometers that is there. Capital that is there we know is Karavati, right? And again we see that this particular area is again rich in a lot of biodiversities. So of course with this we come to the end of today's class. So I have a quick homework for all of you where you need to tell me in which plateau lies between the Aravalli and the Vindhya ranges, right? So this is an NCERT question for all of you, for which I need you to tell me the answer in the comments below. The highest peak in Western Ghats is the Anamudi peak that is there in Kerala. Yes? So corals are basically a type of living organisms that have calcareous depositions. They're type of coelantrates, right? And they're very important. Yes, Malwa Plateau, we know where the Malwa Plateau lies, right? We know that the Malwa Plateau that is there is there in the Central Highlands. I'll quickly take you to that. It makes my life easier to explain it to you. Yes. So this right here is where we have our Malwa Plateau, right, part of the Central Highlands. We know Aravalli flanks it on the west. We know that Vindhya ranges, I give you the answer. And Vindhya ranges are there towards the other side. Yes. Okay. So with this students, we come to the end. I also give you the answer, but nonetheless, do not forget to let me know. And give me features of the Central Highland as well in the comments below. So with this, I'll be ending my class today. I hope you found this particular class helpful for your exam point of view. And in case if you found this helpful, do not forget to let me know in the comments below. And of course, if any more doubts are there, don't forget to let me know in the comments. I know that the PDF is not available right now. It will be available on the Telegram channel. So I'll be winding our class right now. I hope to see you all soon. But up until then, take care, lots of love, and bye-bye.